Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of In Depth. And if you remember this series, we're covering Tzeentch Demons and Thousand Suns type Marines. So those with a blue and pink flavour, I guess, blue, pink and purple flavour. So all those that have dedicated their life to the wonderful Tzeentch powers. So this particular one, we are covering the Daemon Prince of Tzeentch. Now obviously you can get Daemon Princes of Nurgle, Slaanesh and Khorne. But because I'm a Tzeentch and Demons player, we're obviously going to be focusing on the Tzeentch Daemon Prince. So let's get straight into the video. So in the background you're going to be seeing me painting my first ever Daemon Prince actually. This is the first one I've ever attempted, so this is using the plastic kit from Games Workshop. Mine is equipped with 2 Malefic Talons, but we'll cover the options and so on as we go through. So yeah, whilst I talk to you, you get to watch me paint and airbrush my Daemon Prince. So as before then, we start with the statistics of the Daemon Prince. So he has a move of 8 inches, a weapon skill of 2+, ballistic skill of 2+, strength 7, toughness 6, 8 wounds, 4 attacks, a leadership of 10 and a save of 3+. He comes by default with a Hellforged sword and a set of Malefic Talons. There's a number of war gear options as well, so he can actually replace his sword with another set of Malefic Talons, or he can replace it with a Demonic Axe. The model can also take a Warp Bolter, so on his wrist he gets to carry a gun. He can also have wings, and that does increase his power rating, so he comes with a default power rating of 8, you add wings it becomes a power rating of 9, there's +1 for that. But if he does so, his move characteristic is increased by 4 inches, and also gains the fly keyword. So two big changes there, he gets to move 12 and gain fly. His abilities then, he has Death to the False Emperor, now we've covered that in previous videos, but basically any 6s to hit generates an extra attack if you have the Imperium keyword. He has the ability of Demonic, which means he has a 5+ invulnerable save. Demonic Allegiance, which means he can pick Nurgle, Khorne, Tzeentch or Slaanesh, and gains that appropriate keyword. Now mine obviously is dedicated to the powers of Tzeentch, so he gains that keyword. He's the Prince of Chaos, which means I get to reroll 1s made for friendly Legion units, so all Tzeentch Legion units within 6 inches of this model. Also gets the ability to affect friendly demon units within 6 inches, but only again if they owe their allegiance to that particular god. So Tzeentch demons that are, well yeah, demons that are aligned to Tzeentch and get to do that as well, which is pretty cool. He also has Might over Magic, which is only applicable to Khorne Demon Princes, which gives them an extra attack. But if you are aligned to Tzeentch, Nurgle or Slaanesh, you get the Psychic keyword as well as their faction keyword, which means they get to manifest 1 psychic power in each friendly psychic phase and attempt to deny 1 psychic power in the enemy psychic phase. Being a Psyker, it obviously knows Smite, and 1 psychic power from the Dark Hereticus discipline. Now if you catch my previous video, which I'll put a little card up in the corner, I went thoroughly through the Dark Hereticus disciplines specifically for Magnus, so I'm not going to cover it again, but there are a number of powers which are all very, very cool. His faction keywords then are Chaos, Heretic Astartes and in brackets Legion, so in my case it will be Thousand Suns. His normal keywords then are Character, Monster, Demon and Demon Prince. So let's cover some of the stats of the weapons then. If he does take that Warp Bolter, that has a range of 24 inches, it's an Assault 2 weapon, Strength 4, AP -1, but more importantly 2 damage. That's pretty tasty. The Demonic Axe, obviously a melee weapon, +1 strength, so it makes him Strength 8, AP -3, which is pretty damn good, and 3 flat damage as well. It is -1 to hit with that, so it's almost like using a Power Fist, like a cumbersome weapon. But that does mean he's still hitting on 3, so it's not exactly a big drama. The Hellforged sword, again a melee weapon, strength as user, so base strength of 7. It's an AP of -2 and does 3 flat damage. And the Malefic Talons, which the one I'm painting in front of you now also is having. It's a melee weapon, strength as user, so it's strength 7, AP -2 and 2 damage as well. But each time the model fights it can make an additional attack with this weapon. But if it's got 2 sets, which mine has, it gets 3 additional attacks with them, which puts him up to 7 attacks. Now 7 attacks hitting on 2s at strength 7 is damn good. That's why my guy is getting it. Malefic Talons are also pretty good when it comes to points. So let's talk about the Daemon Prince points then. The Daemon Prince without wings is 146, but with wings is 170. So what's that? 24 points for a set of wings. I think that's pretty good. And his melee weapons then. So for a pair of malefic talons, it's 10 points. So 180 points for the model you're looking at in front of you. The other weapons are pretty good. They are, I think, a little bit expensive, especially as you don't get those extra attacks. So they're a few points each. There is a little bit of debate over how many points they are, because Battle Scribe is quoting one price, but the Codex is quoting them at 10 points each. But for me, Malefic Talons for those +3 attacks, and I'll explain why in his sort of strengths and weaknesses in a second. I think the confusion over that Hellforged sword actually comes from the Index quoting at 42 points and the Codex at 10 points. I'm not 100% sure whether that's been FAQ'd, I can't seem to find anything on it. So I'm going to go with the Codex overruling the Index on this case. So let's start with this guy's strengths then. So taking into account that I'm running mine with wings, so for me I think that's a bargain, he needs to take wings. When he's got wings he gains the flyer character keyword, which is very, very good, and that improved movement, so that 12-inch movement. So those are very important to me. I think that a winged Demon Prince is far greater than a walking one. So big strengths there. Then he gains the flyer keyword, which means he can back out of combat and still shoot. Now, in order to gain that bonus, you obviously need to take a Warp Bolter. Warp Bolter is 9 points, I believe, for that extra couple of shots. Not the greatest ability for me. He needs to be in combat. You need to keep him in combat, and backing away isn't always the best thing for him. The important thing, though, I believe this was incorrect in the first issue of the Index, was that he had 2 wounds and was 10 wounds and was a character, which meant that he could be shot and picked out. Now my Index shows him as 8 wounds and the Codex has him at 8 wounds, and it's been thoroughly clarified he has 8 wounds. Now that's a bit weird, you know, losing wounds but becoming more powerful because of it. Now as we know that anything with 10 or more wounds and is a character can be targeted, but anything with under 10 wounds and is a character, he cannot be targeted. This makes him a prime target for your bubble wrap scenario, keeping him, making sure that he's not the nearest target and keeping him protected from anything that can shoot him other than stuff with the sniper special rule, as we also know. So that makes him exceptionally powerful, which means that on the first turn, if you don't happen to get first turn, you can make sure that he's as protected as possible. You can make sure that he's screened, perhaps with a unit of horrors, for example, which I covered in my horrors in-depth video. I'll put a little card up in the corner for you to link to that. But in case you missed it, let me just insert the picture as an example of bubble wrapping your Demon Prince. There we go, this is an example of a bubble wrap using horrors. Now I covered this, as I said, in my horrors in-depth video. So basically, even though he is gargantuan compared to the horrors, he cannot be shot as the nearest target or assaulted because those horrors are in his way. Big thing there, not being able to be shot even though he is ginormous and stands out way above them. So he's a prime target for your bubble wrap. Now you need, if you want to keep that bubble wrap as you move up the field, you're going to need things that can keep up with him. Now if you're running a pure Tzeentch demon army with your demon princes and so on, you've only got really a couple of options that can keep up with him. The first one are the Flamers. They have a move of 12 inches, so they can certainly keep up with him. Plus they have fly, and they're really good at preventing him being assaulted as well, with all those auto-hitting flamey pistols. The other option then really is Screamers. Screamers have a 16-inch move, so they can certainly keep up with him. Both of those units are going to run a 4+ invulnerable save. They're both toughness 4, they're both 2 wounds. And they can both be taken in up to 9 in a unit. So they're equal in as such as they provide the same kind of cover and effect for your Demon Prince. So if you want to keep him moving, and certainly if you want to bubble wrap multiple Demon Princes, which is certainly a very good option, those are your 2 Tzeentch demon options. So we've covered how to keep him protected then. What's the best way to actually use him in combat? So ignoring his gun, his Warp Bolter is pretty lame really. His best abilities clearly are being in combat. 2 Malefic Talons at strength 7 with 7 attacks hitting on 2s, and in fact re-rolling the 1s because of his special ability means that pretty much 7 attacks are going to get through every time. Now picking your target is very interesting here. Causing that 2 damage per malefic talon, these are pretty damn good at wrecking elite troops. 7 attacks against a squad of 5 Terminators, for example. Those Terminators are going to have their save reduced from 2+ down to a 4+, so they're going to be on a 50-50 save from those 7 attacks. And remember, every one of those attacks will kill a 2 wounded Terminator. The other good thing that this guy is going to excel at is taking out flyers. Now, because he's got the flyer keyword, means he can assault those that are flying. And most flyers are around about the toughness 6, toughness 7 before you start getting into the Forge World uberness of things like the Thunderhawk, which rocks toughness 9, but let's not worry about that. So at strength 7, he's going to be wounding flyers on either a 3 or a 4, depending on how powerful those flyers are. Now, most are around about the 6 or 7 mark. So a 4 or a 3+ to hit those flyers, or to wound those flyers, sorry. He's going to hit on 2s, re-rolling 1, so he's pretty much going to get those 7 attacks through. And if he's down to sort of a 3 or a 4 to wound, you know, 3 or 4 of those attacks are going to get through, causing anywhere between 6 and 8 damage on a flyer. That's enough to degrade those flyers quite substantially. And the other thing you can do before you fly into that combat is, if you're not casting any other types of powers, is you can always smite the flyer. So on a 5+, you're going to cause anywhere between D3 and D6 mortal wounds on that flyer. Now, getting some good dice and those attacks in, you are going to see that flyer wrecked in a single round of combat. All bar the, you know, the super tough things like Storm Eagles and so on, that are, and Storm Ravens, that little bit extra in the wound capacity. The other option that you can run is Diabolic Strength. Now, ideally for me, you want another character to cast Diabolic Strength on your Daemon Prince rather than the Daemon Prince doing it. I'd rather have the Daemon Prince smiting or using Death Hex for me. So if you can get another character or another Psyker to cast Diabolic Strength in him, that gives him an extra attack, puts him up to 8 attacks, but more importantly puts him to Strength 9. Now, Strength 9 against elite troops means you're going to now be wounding on 2s, because most are Toughness 4. So that Strength 9 is going to wound Toughness 4 on a 2+. But again, if you're facing aircraft and flyers that are that little bit extra tough, you know, they're the Toughness 8 or Toughness 7, you're now going to be wounding those on 3s as well, which means that with those extra attacks and that extra strength, far more chance of getting through their armour and causing lots of damage. Most of those flyers are going to be reduced to a 5+ save, which is pretty poor, especially when you're causing multiple damage. So that really covers his physical strengths and where you should be using him. So against elite troops and against flyers, he is going to excel, mainly, especially if you've got the wings on him. If he hasn't got the wings, then you haven't got that the anti-fly capability. So for me, definitely take those wings. The other big thing then is his points value. At 180 points, kicking out that volume of attacks and so on is very cost efficient in the current meta. And the fact that he can't be targeted obviously is very important. So for me, Daemon Princes are almost a auto-include in most builds, because he is that good. He will wreck those units of Marines, for example. He will chew through those really easily and let morale deal with the rest. I also mentioned the best psychic powers to be taking for him. He has only got the ability to cast 1, so you do need to pick carefully here. Death Hex is certainly a very viable option. It is a warp charge or warp level of 8, so it is quite difficult to get off. It is above average, and he has no bonuses or buffs to be able to cast that, but it's certainly a very good option. Smite obviously is a go-to. It's only a caster on a 5, so he's got a very good chance of getting that off. The other option is Weaver of Fates. Now, he is a Tzeentch Heretic Astartes model, so that means that Weaver of Fates does work, and that will increase his invulnerable save from a 5+ to a 4+, which is rather effective. However, depending on the rest of your army build, Weaver of Fates is often best used elsewhere. Just depends on what the rest of your army composition is. For me, if you're running a Thousand Suns kind of army, that power is certainly best used on characters like Magnus or even Araman to give them a 3+ invulnerable save. But, you know, if you're running a Daemon Prince type army, then it's certainly a viable option. And I also mentioned Diabolic Strength. Now, Diabolic Strength certainly really benefits this guy. but as I said, it's better cast from someone else onto him rather than him using it himself. Now, if you can get Death Hex off with another character that's got a buff like Magnus or a Lord of Change, for example, certainly go with that option, because they've got far more chance of getting that cast with their +2 when they're non-degraded. Far more chance of getting that off onto an enemy unit than the Daemon Prince himself, but it's certainly something that I would consider taking as one of his psychic power options. But the reality is, Smite is king, so if you're going to be getting just one power off a turn, then you really want to be using the Smite power. One final thing to note then on his strengths is, because he is a Tzeentch and a demon with his keywords, he will benefit from the Changeling. Now, the Changeling is a massive character for Tzeentch demon players, but I'll be covering him in his own special video because he will appear across multiple videos if I was to talk about him now. But needless to say, I'll cover the Changeling and his buffs and who best to use him with in a later video. So let's move into weaknesses then. If you're facing a Daemon Prince, what's the best way to deal with him? He does only have a 5+ invulnerable save. Compared to a lot of Tzeentch demons that rock a 4+, he doesn't have ephemeral form, which means he can't buff his demonic 5+ invulnerable save. So if you can target him with weapons at some stage that ignore his armor save of 3+ and push him down to a 5+, then you've got certainly a very good chance of causing damage to him. The difficulty is if he's being bubble wrapped. Now, any sensible player will attempt to bubble wrap this character because that's the best way of using him, as I mentioned in the strength section. So what you need to do is then get rid of the bubble wrap first. Now, that would depend on what's being used to bubble wrap him, whether that's horrors or, as I said, if you're marching him up the battlefield and trying to keep him with something that can keep up with him, like the Screamers or the Flamers. You do need to get rid of those first. Now, they're not the strongest models in the world, but they are quite dangerous with their 2 wounds and a 4+ invulnerable save. But the best way potentially to get to him is to make sure that you use your movement effectively. So if you can get in and make sure that he is the nearest target, which can be difficult, which is why he is one of the strongest characters. There's not an easy weakness to him, but if you can make sure that he's the nearest target, perhaps with getting your own smites against him, which he can attempt to deny, but I mean, if you can try and reduce him with smite yourself, then that's going to be effective. He does only have 8 wounds. Now, 8 wounds means that he's not going to degrade, so he will be full effectiveness quite a lot. But if you can hit him with multiple damage weapons, you will shred him down pretty quick. But as I said, the difficulty is making sure you can get to him, so it's going to be effective movement, sort of a pull and push kind of tactic where you try and draw his bubble wrap away from him, perhaps by assaulting that unit with some cheap expendable troops, which means they've then got to consolidate into him. That should open him up to a flank manoeuvre and try and get in on a side that those bubble wrapping units have sort of been pulled away by. That's pretty much his only weakness, really. Which is pretty slim, isn't it, really, if you think about it? If you're facing Daemon Princes, yeah, you're in a spot of bother. The tricky part comes is if they start taking multiple Daemon Princes because they're very cost effective. And that is quite a competitive build, is to take multiple Daemon Princes, perhaps in a Supreme HQ kind of formation where you can take between 3 and 5 HQs and a Lord of War. If you then find yourself facing Magnus and between 3 and 5 Daemon Princes, be prepared to be scared. Just because of the character special rules means that you can target the nearest character but not others. So they can be using a Daemon Prince as a screen for the rest of them, who can then come in and smash you. So just be aware of his movement and your movement to make sure that you can try and get him into a more favourable position to take him out. 12-inch movement isn't particularly great. Toughness 6 isn't particularly great. So there are plenty of weapons that can damage him. You've just got to make sure that your movement is spot on so that you can try and take advantage and try and kill him. You can also try and attempt to lure him into sort of a bait unit which can then fall back, or let them be sacrificial, as it were, and let them die, which will open him up certainly to being a nearest unit at that point. If you can lure him, and then you can counter with some more powerful units. Just beware that if he does assault you, he probably will kill that unit. So make sure that any units that you're going to try and counter in your next shooting phase are more than 3 inches away so that he can't consolidate into them and stop them from shooting. So just be aware of your positioning and your movement, and that is the best way to try and counter the Daemon Prince. So that's pretty much going to wrap up this episode of In Depth. So we've covered his strengths, weaknesses, his stats, what psychic powers are probably going to be the most beneficial for him. And that's quite timely really, because I'm just coming up to the last stages on painting the wings on the model in front of you. As you can see now, sort of just those last effects. If you're interested in knowing how I do the bases, I'll put a card up in the corner for the bases as well. They have been the bane of my life. Doing a demonic army with this kind of effort of base has proven very costly on my time, shall we say. They do take bloody ages to keep doing and cranking out so many bases, certainly for a lot of cheap models like horrors. But yeah, that's him pretty much finished. There's a few more pictures that I'll let you watch in a bit more high definition, and I'll catch you in a second. So there we go, Daemon Prince fully painted up in front of your very own eyes, as we've talked about his stats, his strengths, his weaknesses, how best to use him, how best not to use him, how best to try and take him out, which, as I discussed, isn't particularly easy. But I hope that's been of benefit to you Tzeentch Demon type players. Highly recommended, definitely one of the best units, best bang for the buck, as it were, for your Tzeentch and Demon armies. Certainly something that I run quite a lot, and I'm painting up a second one just because of it. I may even do some more, depending whether how competitive I want to get and whether I want to enter some more tournaments perhaps. I certainly would be considering at least running 3, if not more, Daemon Princes and taking advantage of those character special rules. But yeah, very good unit, highly recommended. Certainly should be an auto include almost in any Tzeentch Demon Heretic Astartes Thousand Suns type army. In fact, Daemon Prince in any god type army, if you're running any kind of Heretic Astartes list, very good unit to choose from. Anyway, that wraps the video up. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, like, comment, all that kind of stuff with the keys on below the video. Be much appreciated. Also, don't forget I am still running a 250 subscriber giveaway. Don't forget to enter that. I'll put a little card up in the corner for that as well. So if you're still interested in running for that, that's a £10 Games Workshop gift voucher or equivalent value, depending what part of the world you're in. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.